Hey guys, Cola here, and today's video has been over 10 years in the making. The video game The Last of Us was first released in 2013, during a time when the mainstream opinion of people who enjoyed video games was that they were losers, or loners, or mentally ill social outcasts destined to become school shooters. As a young Cola, I wandered the earth and sometimes felt like all of those things. Minus the school shooter, of course, because that's fucking insane. But in my angsty teen years, and all the way into young adulthood, I often struggled to connect with those around me. But on the rare occasion that I did meet someone who I vibed big-time mondo cool with, The Last of Us was always the game that I would show them. Games can be art, I'd say, and watching someone experience that opening half hour of The Last of Us for the first time was always something special. My radical wife is the most excellent and lovely example of this. She had limited experience with video games at the time, and had never played The Last of Us before. It was extra special in that case, because the first time I ever spoke to her, I asked her what the name of the last book that she read was. She said it was Cormac McCarthy's The Road. For those who may not know, The Road is a novel about a father and child traveling together across the United States after the collapse of civilization, trying to survive the perils of a cruel and unrelentingly bleak world. Which, funnily enough, is exactly what The Last of Us is about. This was almost 8 years ago now, and we're happily married. Although, cool, radical, and marriage lore aside, this video is not about The Last of Us Part 1. This video is about the second game, and boy howdy, The Last of Us Part 2. It's really something. I don't think it's out of pocket for me to say that The Last of Us Part 2 is one of the most controversial and catastrophically polarizing games to ever exist, and for reasons you may not expect. The controversy doesn't stem from something like the historic moral panic of the Grand Theft Auto series, or the fabled narcotic levels of addictive gameplay of something like World of Warcraft, no. The Last of Us Part 2's controversy came from the direction Naughty Dog studio head Neil Druckmann decided to take the game's story. As a quick side note, this should go without saying, but I feel the need to say it anyway. When this game was released, there were a bunch of people who threatened the devs and Neil Druckmann himself with bodily harm or even death, and even though I think he's a shit writer who made a terrible game, it's not okay to do that, and I don't wish him any harm, no one else should either. It's one thing to criticize someone's creative work and something else entirely to threaten their family. I just wanted to make that position perfectly clear before anyone thinks of going all, we need to talk about Kevin. Anyway, moving on. The Last of Us Part 2 is a fascinating case study in how a sequel can fundamentally misunderstand the reason the first entry was so beloved, and completely alienate almost an entire fan base. In my view, the first game was adored for three main reasons. The first is, as dark as the subject matter got, the story at its core was one of hope. The second is, as hardened as its characters became, at its heart, the game was about love. And the third and most important piece to the polarization is, it is a story that ended with an open-ended, ethically ambiguous question, one that let those who had played the first game answer for themselves. It's one of the few perfect endings in gaming, hell, in all of storytelling, because of this ending, and the fact that it so perfectly balances this question on a razor's edge, in addition to the fact that the game does not tell you how to feel. The narrative of the second game annihilates this completely, and not only answers this question from the ending of the first, but it does so in such a concrete way that all other interpretations really don't have room to exist. A great example to better explain this would be the classic trolley problem, in which there are 5 people hogtied to the same set of tracks that a trolley is racing down, who are about to be turned into paste and killed. You are in the unique position of being able to flip a switch and have the trolley change course, so that those 5 people can continue to live and presumably pay taxes. But if you do flip the switch, someone else will be run over and killed. So, do you do nothing and allow 5 people to die, or do you flip the switch with the knowledge that someone else will because of your decision? The beautiful thing about this problem is that there is no objectively correct answer, but rather many different answers based on your own moral compass that can be discussed endlessly. A few years ago, I happened to be discussing the trolley problem with a coworker, and he said that not only would he not divert the tracks, but that anyone who would was actually making the wrong choice. I observed that it was just the wrong choice in his opinion, because there exist so many schools of thought that would disagree. And this is actually a good thing, because that's the beauty of the question. He went on to say that not only was any other answer just incorrect, but evil, because an answer differing from his own would make the other person a cold-blooded murderer. Personally, I think that's a pretty dangerously inflexible view to hold, and it kind of misses the point of the question in the conversational sense, but that dude had about as much of a sense of humor as a pile of burnt bum flakes, so the discussion basically fizzled out on its own after that. Anyway, not unlike my old coworker, The Last of Us Part 2 asserts a similar judgment and essentially poisons the well of the first game with this exact same line of inflexible logic. In short, it was a fucking dumpster fire, and I'm not exaggerating when I say I would rather wipe my ass with sandpaper and broken glass sprayed in lemon juice than have to ever relive that dog abortion of a narrative, ever again. The superposition-like query at the end of the first game, that beautiful state of everything and nothing being true all at once, was completely shattered. Now, if you're someone who hasn't played the second game but wants to, or if you're a fan of the HBO show and you're super excited for the second season, be warned, there are spoilers ahead. When Part 2 originally released, I just kept thinking to myself, man, this is a pile of shit. I also kept thinking how I wished I could at least enjoy these wonderful video game environments and the improved combat without all of the other parts. Like the parts where I was being beaten over the head repeatedly with the assertion that not only was my and so many other various interpretations wrong, but we were bad people for having come to those conclusions. The parts that made you feel like you were watching your childhood bully melt your fucking dog into a pile of gibbling bits with battery acid. The parts that insulted you and preached to you at the same time, from a horse so high it could actually smell God's ass. A story that so successfully corrupted the experience, I honestly couldn't even enjoy playing the goddamn game. It felt like trying to eat a 5-star meal cooked by a fucking child rapist. I couldn't even stomach it. Joel's death was on par with the Eclipse, emotionally speaking, with the difference being, despite all of the pitch-black subject matter and misery Berserk's characters go through, Berserk is pretty much a perfect story, and The Last of Us 2 is, well, not. R.I.P. to the two legends, though. You are both sorely missed. So imagine my disdain when the remastered version of the second game was announced. Oh great, I said. A horrific reminder of a still fresh psychic wound. Can't wait to ignore that completely. And then I heard about some new mode that had players taking on various missions in levels repurposed from the game's single-player campaign. And Joel was a playable character. For the first time, hope emerged. Could this be my opportunity to enjoy the second game in a way that I was never able to originally? Could this be my shot to utterly detach myself from the sack-stomping disappointment and finally be able to enjoy what remained? It was a genuine, long-held but long-abandoned personal dream come true. I felt like Sonic the Hedgehog shopping for ancient rings at the Antique Roadshow. Okay, I know that was a stretch, but I don't fucking care. I'm leaving it in because it made me laugh. This new mode, called No Return, is a roguelike mode, which means that if you fail any of the 5 missions before a boss, sorry Charlie, back to the start. With nothing. Like a goddamn NES game. But that's okay, because our boy Joel is so fucking back. So I jumped in, got my ass absolutely handed to me, but I kept trying, and dying, and trying again, and honestly, the dog delivered. Seeing Joel explode back onto the screen in all of his digital glory, nary a dirty deed done to him, dirt cheap or otherwise, was absolutely heavenly. Running around like a goddamn killing machine, reaping the digital lives of anyone stupid enough to get spawned into a level has never felt so satisfying. This is no doubt partially due to the fact that the series has never looked better graphically, and say what you will about Naughty Dog, Lord knows I've said it all and then some, these guys do know how to make a goddamn good looking video game, with gunplay tighter than an old pair of jeans after Thanksgiving dinner. For me, this was the resolution to the second game I always knew I needed, but didn't think I'd ever get. Up until this point, the whole thing was just a bad joke at best, or a goddamn personal insult at worst. It wasn't something that I believed capable of bringing me any real enjoyment whatsoever. But apparently, all it took was a bonus mode and a re-release where I could finally play as my favorite character without seeing him broken, humiliated, and murdered on screen. Unless it's my fault, of course, but I'm cool with that. I don't know, man. Maybe in my old age I'm just becoming more easily placated. Or maybe this is just enough to justify a purchase. Either way, if you have an itchy trigger finger and a taste for a party more brutal than a pit bull at a toddler's birthday, I'd suggest you pick this one up. Well, if you own the original, that is, then it's only $10. If you have to pay full price for the thing, that's up to you. I guess that depends on how much money you have to burn, or your willingness to inflict misery upon yourself if you decide to play through the game's single-player campaign. That's for you to decide. Let's just call it your own personal trolley problem on the PlayStation 5. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I fucking love all of you, and I'll see you all over the next Digital Horizon. Cheers.